Long ago, in a city filled with noise, gold, and endless ambition, there lived a young man named Kareem. Kareem was not born into wealth. His father had been a simple merchant who sold fabrics in a small market stall, and his mother spent her days sewing clothes for neighbors just to keep food on the table. From a young age, Kareem watched the wealthy men of the city pass by in elegant clothes and fine horses. Their laughter was loud, their pockets full, and their lives seemed untouched by worry. Meanwhile, Kareem's father often returned home exhausted, counting coins carefully under the dim light of an oil lamp. Sometimes there were enough coins. Sometimes there were not. One night, Kareem asked his father a question that had been growing inside him for years. "Father, why are some men rich while others struggle every day?" His father paused before answering. "Because some men chase gold," he said quietly, "and some men chase peace." Kareem frowned. "And which one should I chase?" His father smiled gently. "That is something every man must decide for himself." But deep inside Kareem's heart, the answer had already been chosen. He wanted gold. He wanted power. He wanted a life where he would never again count coins under a weak lamp. Years passed. Kareem grew into a clever and ambitious young man. He worked in the market beside his father, learning how merchants negotiated prices, how traders moved goods across distant lands, and how wealth flowed through the city like an invisible river. But Kareem noticed something else. The richest merchants were not always the most honest. Some lied about their goods. Some cheated their partners. Some built their fortune on promises they never intended to keep. At first, Kareem felt uneasy watching these things. But slowly, another thought entered his mind. If this is how wealth is built, then perhaps honesty is only for the poor. One evening, while the market was closing and the streets were growing quiet, Kareem met a strange old man sitting beside a fountain. The man wore simple clothes, but his eyes were sharp and observant. He watched Kareem carefully as the young man passed. "You walk like a man who is chasing something," the old man said. Kareem stopped. "And what do you see that I am chasing?" "Everything." Kareem laughed slightly. "And what is wrong with that?" The old man leaned forward. "There is nothing wrong with chasing everything," he said slowly. "But sometimes, when you chase everything, you lose something you did not realize was valuable." Kareem crossed his arms. "And what might that be?" The old man studied him for a long moment before answering. "Happiness." Kareem shook his head. "Happiness comes when a man has wealth." The old man smiled faintly. "Are you certain?" "Yes." "Then perhaps we should make a deal." Kareem raised an eyebrow. "What kind of deal?" The old man reached into his robe and removed a small silver coin. "This coin represents something you carry," he said. "And what is that?" "Your happiness." Kareem laughed again. "You cannot hold happiness in your hand." "No," the old man replied calmly. "But you can trade it." Kareem became curious. "And what would I receive if I traded it?" "Everything you want." Kareem stared at the coin. "What is the price?" The old man answered simply. "You must give up your happiness." Kareem smirked. "That sounds like a foolish trade." "Does it?" the old man asked quietly. "You said happiness comes from wealth. If you become wealthy, then happiness will return anyway." Kareem thought about this. The logic seemed simple. If wealth creates happiness, then giving away happiness now meant nothing, because it would come back later with greater fortune. Finally, Kareem said, "Fine. I accept." The old man placed the coin into Kareem's hand. "Then it is done." Kareem waited for something dramatic to happen. Nothing did. The market remained silent. The fountain continued to flow. The old man simply stood up. "Remember," he said, "from this moment forward, your happiness belongs to the world." And with that he walked away. Kareem shrugged. The next morning an opportunity appeared. A merchant caravan from a distant land arrived in the city carrying rare spices worth a fortune. But the traders were unfamiliar with the local market and desperate to sell quickly. Kareem convinced them that the spices were worth far less than they actually were. He bought them cheaply. Then he sold them to wealthy nobles for 3 times the price. Within a single week, Kareem had earned more money than his father had made in an entire year. His father was shocked. "How did you do this?" Kareem smiled. "By thinking differently." But Kareem noticed something strange. When he held the gold coins in his hand, he expected to feel joy. Instead, he felt nothing. He ignored the feeling. More opportunities came. Kareem began investing in ships, caravans, and warehouses. He partnered with powerful traders and slowly built a network of business that stretched across cities. Years passed. His wealth grew beyond imagination. He moved into a large mansion overlooking the city. Servants prepared his meals. Guards protected his property. His name became known throughout the region. People called him one of the richest men in the kingdom. But at night, when the city lights faded and silence filled the rooms of his enormous home, Kareem sometimes sat alone by the window. He would look at the streets below and wonder why something felt missing. One evening, his father visited him. The old man looked around the mansion quietly. "You have built a great fortune," he said. "Yes. But tell me honestly, my son, are you happy?" Kareem hesitated. "Of course." But the answer felt hollow. Months later, his father passed away. At the funeral, many people offered Kareem condolences. He stood beside the grave, surrounded by wealth, servants, and influence. But when the earth covered the coffin, Kareem felt something strange again. Not sadness. Not grief. Just emptiness. He remembered the old man by the fountain. The coin. The deal. But he pushed the thought away. Business demanded attention. Years continued to pass. Kareem's empire grew larger. He built ships. He controlled markets. He influenced politicians. But something else slowly began disappearing from his life. Friends stopped visiting. People no longer spoke honestly around him. Every conversation seemed to carry hidden motives. One day, Kareem looked around a banquet table filled with powerful men laughing loudly. Yet somehow, he had never felt more alone. And far away, somewhere in the city, the old man who once sat beside the fountain watched silently. Because Kareem had only just begun to understand the cost of the deal he had made. Years passed after Kareem made his fortune, and the city slowly began to change the way it looked at him. At first, people admired him. They spoke about the young merchant who had risen from poverty and built an empire through intelligence and bold decisions. His name became a symbol of success. Traders mentioned him with respect. Young merchants tried to copy his strategies. But admiration has a strange habit of turning into distance. As Kareem's wealth grew, fewer people spoke to him the way they once had. When he walked through the market, merchants bowed their heads respectfully, but their smiles felt forced. Old neighbors who once shared tea with his family now spoke carefully around him, choosing their words as if they were speaking to a king. Even the laughter around him felt rehearsed. One evening, Kareem hosted a grand banquet inside his mansion. The hall was illuminated with golden lamps. Musicians played soft melodies while servants carried trays filled with expensive food and rare wines. Merchants, politicians, and nobles filled the room. They praised Kareem loudly. "You are the most successful trader in the region. Your mind is unmatched. You have changed the way commerce works in this city." Kareem smiled politely and raised his glass. But inside he felt nothing. As the night went on, the laughter grew louder, the conversations more exaggerated. At one point Kareem excused himself and stepped outside onto a balcony overlooking the city. The streets below were quiet. From there he could see the small houses of ordinary people, the dim lights flickering behind windows, and the narrow roads where he had once walked as a young man beside his father. A strange memory returned to him. The fountain. The old man. The coin. He reached into a drawer in his room later that night and found the silver coin still resting there. For years he had kept it without thinking much about it, but now he turned it slowly between his fingers. "What exactly did I trade?" he murmured to himself. At that moment, a knock sounded on his door. It was his closest business partner, Malik. Malik had been with Kareem during the early years of his rise. Together they had built warehouses, ships, and trading routes. But Malik had a different personality. He was more ruthless, more aggressive, more willing to take risks that crossed the line between clever business and outright deception. Malik entered the room with a wide grin. "Kareem," he said, "I have found an opportunity that will double our wealth within a year." Kareem placed the coin back on the table. "What kind of opportunity?" Malik sat down. "There is a village near the Eastern River. Their farms produce grain for half the province." Kareem nodded. "I know the place." Malik leaned forward. "If we buy the land surrounding their farms and control the storage houses, we control the supply. And the farmers? They will have no choice but to sell through us." Kareem frowned slightly. "That will drive their prices down." "Yes," Malik said with a shrug. "And their families?" Malik smiled coldly. "We are not running a charity." Kareem remained silent. Malik watched him carefully. "You built your fortune by making hard decisions," Malik continued. "This is just another one." Kareem looked out the window. He remembered his father's stall in the market. He remembered the nights counting coins under a weak lamp. For a moment, something inside him hesitated. Then he said quietly, "Do it." The plan worked. Within a year, Karim and Malik controlled nearly all the grain distribution in the region. Their profits soared. But the farmers struggled. Many of them were forced to sell their harvest for far less than it was worth. Some lost their land entirely. Word spread through the countryside that Karim's empire was growing, but so was the suffering beneath it. One afternoon, while traveling through the eastern lands to inspect new storage houses, Karim stopped near the very village Malik had mentioned. Children played beside dusty roads. Women carried water buckets between houses. Men worked in fields that no longer fully belonged to them. As Karim passed through the village square, he noticed an old man sitting beside a small well. The man looked familiar. Karim slowed his horse. It was the same old man from the fountain. The same calm eyes. The same quiet presence. Karim dismounted and approached him. "You," Karim said. The old man nodded slightly. "Yes. You disappeared that day." "I did." Karim folded his arms. "You told me I had traded my happiness." "Yes." Karim gestured toward the road behind him. "I now own ships, warehouses, and trade routes across 3 provinces." "I know. I have more wealth than I ever imagined." "I know that too." Karim looked directly into the man's eyes. "So tell me, where is my happiness?" The old man did not answer immediately. Instead he looked around the village. At the tired farmers. At the thin horses tied beside wooden carts. At the quiet faces of people who avoided Karim's gaze. Then he said softly, "You traded it." Karim frowned. "I expected happiness to return once I became wealthy." The old man shook his head. "Happiness does not follow wealth." "Then what does?" Silence. Karim looked confused. The old man continued. "When you traded your happiness, you removed something from your heart." "And what was that?" "The ability to feel joy without ownership." Karim said nothing. The old man stood slowly. "Tell me something, Karim." "What?" "When your father died, what did you feel?" Karim hesitated. "Nothing." "And when you earned your first fortune?" "Nothing." "And when you built this empire?" Karim lowered his eyes slightly. "Nothing." The old man nodded gently. "That is the price." Karim clenched his fists. "Then give it back." The old man studied him. "Do you want it back?" "Yes." The old man's voice became serious. "If you take back your happiness, you will also feel everything you have avoided." "What do you mean?" "You will feel guilt. You will feel regret. You will feel the pain of every person harmed by your ambition." Karim stared at him. "And if I refuse?" "Then you will keep your wealth. But you will remain empty." Wind moved softly through the village square. Karim looked around again. At the farmers. At the children. At the fields. Something uncomfortable stirred inside him for the first time in many years. Not happiness, but something else. Something closer to awareness. Finally he asked, "What must I do?" The old man smiled slightly. "That answer will come when you are ready to lose everything." Karim's eyes narrowed. "I already lost happiness." The old man shook his head slowly. "No. You only sold it." "What is the difference?" The old man began walking away. "Selling is easy. Buying it back," he said quietly over his shoulder, "is far more expensive." And as Karim watched him disappear down the dusty road, a strange thought entered his mind. For the first time in years, he wondered whether his empire had been built not on success, but on a mistake. Days passed after Karim met the old man in the village, but the conversation refused to leave his mind. For years, Karim had lived with a strange emptiness he never truly questioned. Wealth had filled every corner of his life, and the noise of success had always been loud enough to silence quiet doubts. But now something had changed. The old man's words had planted a seed. "You only sold it. Buying it back is far more expensive." Karim returned to his mansion in the city, yet the place felt different now. The same servants moved through the halls. The same guards stood by the gates. The same business letters arrived every morning. But the silence inside the walls felt heavier than before. One evening, Karim sat alone in the dining hall where long tables once hosted extravagant banquets. The room that once echoed with laughter now felt empty. He picked up the silver coin again and stared at it for a long time. "If happiness can be sold," he murmured, "then perhaps it can be bought." But the old man's warning echoed in his mind. Buying it back would be expensive. The next morning Malik arrived with exciting news. "Our ships from the southern coast have returned," Malik said with a wide smile. "The cargo is worth more than we expected. If we sell now, we will control half the spice market in the region." Karim listened quietly. Malik noticed the unusual silence. "What is wrong with you lately?" he asked. "Nothing," Kareem replied. Malik laughed. "You look like a man who has lost something." Kareem almost smiled at the irony. "Perhaps I have." Malik waved his hand dismissively. "Whatever it is, gold fixes everything." For years Kareem had believed the same thing. But now the words sounded strangely hollow. Later that day Kareem rode alone through the city. He passed the market where his father once worked. The small stall no longer existed. Another merchant had taken its place. But Kareem could still remember the smell of fabrics, the quiet evenings counting coins, the calm voice of his father explaining that some men chase gold while others chase peace. At the time, Kareem had believed peace belonged only to fools. Now he was no longer certain. He continued riding until he reached the edge of the city where poor families lived in narrow streets and worn houses. Here, life looked very different from the marble halls of his mansion. Children played with broken toys. Women carried water buckets between houses. Men returned from labor with tired faces and dusty clothes. Kareem noticed something strange. Despite their struggles, some of them were laughing. Real laughter. The kind that did not sound forced. The kind he had not heard in years. He watched them quietly from his horse. A young boy tripped while running and began to cry. His mother quickly lifted him, wiped his tears and kissed his forehead. The boy laughed again within seconds. The moment was small. But something inside Kareem tightened. He realized he had not laughed like that since he was a child. That night he could not sleep. The old man's words returned again and again. "If you take back your happiness, you will feel everything." Kareem began to understand what that meant. The next morning he summoned Malik. Malik entered the office confidently, already discussing future plans. "We should expand north," he said. "The mines there are profitable." Kareem interrupted him. "What would happen if we released control of the eastern farms?" Malik blinked in disbelief. "What? The farmers? What if we allowed them to sell freely again?" Malik stared at him as if he had gone mad. "Why would we do that?" "Because they deserve fair prices." Malik laughed loudly. "Fairness does not build empires." Kareem remained calm. "Perhaps empires are not worth building." Malik's expression hardened. "Listen to yourself. You worked your entire life to reach this position." "Yes. And now you want to give it away?" Kareem looked out the window. "Maybe that is the price." Malik shook his head. "You are being foolish." "Perhaps." But Kareem had already made his decision. Within weeks he began changing the structure of his business. He released control of the grain storage houses and allowed farmers to sell their crops freely again. He cancelled several trading contracts that had trapped small merchants in unfair agreements. He even sold 2 of his ships and used the money to rebuild villages damaged by drought. The city was shocked. Rumors spread quickly. Some people believed Kareem had lost his mind. Others said he had become weak. Malik was furious. "You are destroying everything we built," he shouted one afternoon. "I am repairing something I broke," Kareem replied. Their partnership ended that day. Malik took what wealth he could and left the city. Kareem watched him go without anger. Weeks turned into months. Kareem's fortune slowly shrank as he continued correcting the damage his empire had caused. For the first time in years he began meeting people face to face again. Farmers, laborers, small merchants. He listened to their stories. Some thanked him. Some did not trust him. Some simply stared in confusion. One evening, while walking through the same village where he had spoken with the old man, Kareem saw something unexpected. Children were playing beside the fields again. The farmers were working their land with renewed energy. The atmosphere felt lighter. Kareem sat beside the same well where the old man had once been sitting. As if summoned by memory itself, the old man appeared once again on the road. "You have begun paying the price," he said calmly. Kareem nodded. "Yes. And how do you feel?" Kareem thought carefully before answering. "For the first time in many years," he said slowly, "I feel something." "What do you feel?" "Regret." The old man nodded. "That is the beginning. And pain." "That too." Kareem looked down at the silver coin in his hand. "I have lost much of my wealth." "Yes. But something else has returned." The old man smiled slightly. "And what is that?" Kareem watched the children running through the field nearby. "One moment yesterday," he said quietly. "What moment?" "A boy gave me a piece of bread as thanks for helping his father repair a well." "And?" Kareem's voice softened. "When he smiled, I smiled too." The old man studied his face. "That was happiness." Kareem closed his hand around the coin. "So the price was not gold?" "No." "What was it then?" The old man answered gently. The price was letting go of the man you became. Kareem sat silently for a long moment. Then he looked at the old man again. Why did you offer me the deal in the first place? The old man's eyes reflected quiet wisdom. Because some lessons cannot be taught with words. Only with experience? Yes. Kareem exhaled slowly. I spent half my life chasing wealth. And the other half understanding it. The sun was beginning to set over the fields. Warm light covered the village. Children laughed in the distance. Farmers walked home from the fields. And for the first time in many years, Kareem felt something inside his chest that had been absent for far too long. Not the loud excitement of victory. Not the empty satisfaction of wealth. But a quiet warmth. The kind his father once spoke about under the dim light of an oil lamp. Kareem placed the silver coin on the edge of the well. What happens to it now? He asked. The old man smiled. It waits for the next man who believes happiness can be bought. Kareem stood up slowly. And if he finds it? Then his journey will begin. The wind moved gently across the fields. And as Kareem walked back toward the village, he understood something that had taken him an entire lifetime to learn. Gold can buy many things. Power can control many people. But happiness is never owned. It is only lived.